So Mateus Fernandes. And that is a name that I feel as United fans we are going to be hearing a lot more about in the next few weeks. And I think it's a name that we are going to be continually hearing until he hopefully walks through the door at Carrington, because the interest is starting to get a little bit more intensified. And for me, that does bode well for what is, as I've said in many videos, a very important summer in terms of revamping the midfield. Unfortunately, the consensus was that Mateus Fernandes will be available at a bit of a cut price deal if West Ham get relegated, but I don't think that will be the case. I actually think relegation or not will have little effect on how much he's sold for. For one reason is there is interest from other teams. Arsenal and PSG have reported strong interest, and that will essentially drive up a bidding war. So you won't be able to get that cut price deal as if you were the only person that was in for him and you basically had a straight beeline for a player and a little bit more leverage. West Ham are now able to kind of leverage the fact that they've got multiple teams interested to drive up the fee. That is how it will work. So people will argue whether the eventual cost, some people have been mentioning 80 million, 70 million, maybe between 55 and 60, around that price anyway. And obviously, him being 21, relatively still inexperienced, but I think that is part of the allure with him, that there's such potential and that he is so young and got so much time and minutes and shown quite a lot of maturity and responsibility in the West Ham midfield for a Premier League side already, that there is a lot more to come from him. For me, him being Portuguese, I think he's captain the under-21 side. Him being a very vocal lover of Bruno Fernandes. I think Agent Bruno's got something for us. I'm not going to lie. I might be deluded. I might be overly confident. But I genuinely believe if United seriously want Mateus Fernandes, I give us an 80% shot of landing him compared to the other teams. I know Arsenal probably are better placed in terms of how settled they are as a squad. They're competing for big trophies and big honours. They're in London, which is always a massive pull and attraction for players, especially with Mateus Fernandes already living there. And then you've got Arteta as well, who's known to be extremely persuasive when he speaks to transfer targets. But PSG for me is even more of a concern than Arsenal. Obviously, it's Paris. PSG are a very marketable club if you are going there as a player. The earning potential, you're playing with world-class players week in, week out, more or less guaranteed to win a league. You're going to be challenging for the Champions League year in, year out as well. It's a young squad that are still ascending. It's a dynastic team that you've got the potential of joining. So if PSG is serious about their interest, then that could be one significant hurdle and concern. As well as the fact, unfortunately, they won't have Premier League tax. So if West Ham are more likely or probably prefer to sell to a foreign team than one within England, foreign teams are all often able to get transfers a little bit cheaper when they are buying from Premier League squads. Premier League clubs obviously give other Premier League clubs a little bit more of a premium, even though West Ham might not actually be a Premier League club at the time, but the premise still stands. But Mateus Fernandes is someone that I've started to look at a little bit more over the last few months. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, so I'm going to preface it that I've been watching West Ham games week in, week out. But I've seen enough of him. I've seen a handful of games that he's played. There are a couple of games where I feel like he can see the talent and ability, but sometimes the game could pass him by. He's not really someone that I've seen always grab the game by the scruff of the neck or be incredibly noticeable, but that could also be the fact that he is playing for West Ham, who have been one of the poor sides in the league. That's why they're on the verge of relegation. He might be even more better when he's playing with better players, but you can still see the traits and attributes there that I would go as far as to say he's got every bit of a chance of being a complete midfielder. I think he has very little weaknesses and there's room for growth within his game. I watched him against Arsenal in the last game, so obviously there's an element of recency bias there. he did miss that big chance. But I thought he was arguably the best midfielder on the pitch that day. And I saw a lot of things about him that I didn't notice in previous matches. Because he looks equally aggressive and combative off the ball. But what stood out to me was his passing range. I feel like his pass appreciation and his range of passing was very, very enticing. And it's interesting because I feel like he has a similar profile to Elliot Anderson. But some may argue that with Mateus Fernandes being 21, Elliot Anderson being 23, I still think Elliot Anderson is better than him. But when I'm looking at him player for player and attribute for attribute and trait for trait, I'm not sure there's a whole lot between them. And I'd actually go as far to say I think Mateus Fernandes probably has a little bit more pass appreciation and pass detail, whilst not exactly being the dynamic carrier of Elliot Anderson and not having quite his power off the ball. I think there is a lot of similarities between them in terms of how complete they are, because we've obviously been linked to a lot of midfielders, Baleba, Adam Morton, Tonali. And I think a lot of these players have significant strengths, but they have quite glaring and obvious weaknesses. What was incredibly enticing about Elliot Anderson was he seems fairly complete. There isn't really a major weakness in his game that you can point to. That complete midfielder that you talk about, Roy Keane always speaks about, he thinks in that midfielders are obviously categorised into different profiles and 8s and 10s and 6s. He says back in his day, midfielders should just be able to do a little bit of everything. Obviously, the game is a little bit different now. People are a little bit more magnifying on specialist traits. But I think Elliot Anderson is one of those where he seemed the most complete because he felt like a little bit more of a jack of all trades, whilst also being semi-specialised in a couple. Whereas some of the other players, they have strengths that are quite significant, but they have weaknesses that are a little bit glaring. I think Mateus Fernandes is actually one of the more complete midfielders in terms of his well-roundedness that we've been linked to. And that's why I feel like there's some similarity between him and Elliot Anderson. But for the price that Mateus Fernandes will cost compared to Elliot Anderson, and if you're looking at potential as well, because some may think that Mateus Fernandes being a couple of years younger, that he could actually end up better than Elliot Anderson in the long run. I think 50, 60 million for Mateus Fernandes might not be the worst thing. And obviously I've seen West Ham, I've asked West Ham fans about it online. A couple of people have mentioned that he is a great player and they think he is worth 50, 60 million. They're saying he's not quite in that Rice bracket where he was a standout every game and he was literally basically winning games by himself for West Ham, or being this kind of all-action Beckenbauer player, as some people like to prescribe Declan Rice. I won't quite go that far, but they have said he's 100% capable of being a quality player for a top side, which West Ham fans know that they're not. But anyway, I actually am going to go into what has been reported. So the reports are, this is by Sully Talks, who is a United ITK with knowledge, and he is very reliable. I'd say he's probably up there as one of the gold standard for ITKs in United. And this is what he reported. So Mateus Fernandes is attracting serious interest from United and is high on the midfielder shortlist. Some initial contact took place with his representatives too, just to gauge early interest, and he's very open to a potential move. United will want a significantly larger fee than what they paid for him, even if they go down. I think they paid 40 million for him. Multiple clubs have Fernandes on their radar, including PSG and Arsenal. However, I've heard that PSG are currently prioritising an attack first in the summer. It will become more clear in the next weeks what United's steps are as we near the summer, with concrete steps starting to take place for their targets. Diogo Dalot, what have you got for me? Bruno Fernandes, what have you got for me? But to me, I think with the composition of United's squad, Champions League football, him being a huge fan of Bruno Fernandes is a massive help. I think United are quite well placed here. And if United can act quickly and swiftly like they did last summer, because I think Baleba is, whether you like it or not, is a shoo-in to be signed. this summer. I think Baleba will be in a United shirt next season. It's the easiest deal to do. I think we did pretty much the only club that's in for him. Baleba's on his knees to sign for the club. His value has tanked compared to last season because he's had a little bit of an indifferent season this one. So we probably get him on a cut price deal. And I think Mateus Fernandes is another one that seems attainable. So I think two of the signings United look very likely to get over the line is Mateus Fernandes and Baleba. And I think for the potential price of both, United will have enough money to sign another midfielder and possibly another. And that is what is the major selling point for me. Because I think you can get Baleba and Mateus Fernandes for around, 130 to 140 million. And that gives you potential to go for another marquee midfielder to round that out for around 70 or 80. Or if you want to be a little bit more clever in the market, if Tchouaméni becomes available, I think that will end up being a very solid rebuild. If he's not, can he be a little bit more intricate or a little bit cleverer with your recruitment? I think United and Ineos can do that. Look into France, shop in France, the likes of Mamadou Sangare. From Lens, you have Lamine Camara from Monaco, Jiri Cisse from Rennes, I believe. There are players out there where they won't have the Premier League tax. You could get a couple of them in, and then you can end up rounding out your midfield quite strongly without actually breaking the bank or having to spend 300 million on it, as some people would have you believe. But Mateus Fernandes is a player still learning his trade, who's showing signs of already being a potentially complete player. And I think I've underrated him. Because naturally, as we've been linked more strongly to him over the past couple of months, I've actually tuned in to try and watch him a couple more times. And I'm surprised. I actually do really like what I see. And he's a better player than I thought. And I think his toolkit is one that is very attractive to me. With his age as well and his profile, I think he could be up there as one of the better players in the league in the midfield area in the next few years if United develop him correctly. And I always like watching 90s. Some people obviously have a little bit of an aversion to comps or to all action comps or even YouTube highlights. I'd rather not do YouTube highlights. I like comps though, because people think they can be nitpicky and overly positive. I disagree. I think a lot of you believe this about yourself as well. I think if you've got a certain eye, I think you can learn enough about a player through comps than you'd think. I think sometimes you'll need to watch a player do about 5 or 6 actions to really, really tell. Just to look at them closely and feel like they've got anything that kind of catches your eye that you like. But for me, I think this is a deal that we should be getting slightly excited about if you're in favour of signing him. Because I think this is a deal that United are very well placed to get over the line. So we've got to watch this space and keep an eye on it. But anyway, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button, and I will see you next time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you want Mateus Fernandes? Are you excited about the potential deal? Would you rather someone else? Let me know in the comments.